What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. For those of you stopping by for the first time, if you see something you like here at some point during this video, please don't forget to subscribe. For those of you stopping by that have been here before, welcome back to TLTG Reviews, my friends. Glad you came to see me. So, one of the new releases from Happyland Studio. This is the first in the new trifecta of creative designs from E.J. Wells. Today we're talking about Gerannabis. Stay tuned. So Gerannabis, very creative and interesting fragrance, to say the very least. So starting off with the presentation is the usual, these stock bottles that EJ uses. They absolutely get the job done, stack well. Standard atomizers that spray, seems like a mile. They spray a lot and they spray far. Oh man. The usual, you know, I get that they're stock bottles, but I actually like these stock bottles, so standard rating for them is a 7 out of 10 for me. Now, this is released in 2020. This is a new release as of this past weekend. It doesn't have a classification, but based off the note breakdown and the scent profile, I'm going to go ahead and classify it as a woody spicy. So for those of you that care, I'll actually put the notes right there. So what do I get from it? So off the top, it's surprisingly fresh and very herbal. The cannabis flower is obviously the most prominent note in this. I never really detect the geranium and the orris root much in this one. The tomato leaf, I believe, adds a freshness, but I can't really distinguish it. And you do get a touch of spice. I do detect the cinnamon in this. And I'm guessing that clary sage is adding to the herbaceousness and the spice to it, because clary sage can give off both of those scent profiles. And once you get into the transition, you're getting a lot more cannabis. The cinnamon and the clove are really starting to come out more and make it a tad more spicy, I find, in the transitional stage, which on this fragrance lasts about 2 hours. Really and truly, after the opening starts to change after about 30 minutes. And like I said, it stays very herbal for a long time. That's the main characteristic of this fragrance, is it's very herbal. I mean, it's a pot fragrance, basically, is how you can look at it. And then once you get into the base, you're going to get a touch of powder. I'm guessing that's attributing to the geranium and the orris root. I'm usually pretty good about picking up orris root when it's in a fragrance, but I don't really detect it. But it does get a little powdery in the far dry down on my skin. And once you get into the very deep dry down, you're really just left with that touch of oud that's described in this. That's really what it smells like too, a touch of agarwood for sure. There's a little bit of oud that you get in the deep dry down. You do detect the oud earlier on than that, but it really becomes prominent in the deep dry down as the main thing you're going to smell for the final stages of this fragrance. It's very creative, to say the very least. EJ did a fantastic job with this. It's surprisingly wearable for a cannabis fragrance. Every cannabis fragrance that I've tried so far has been too overpowering on the cannabis note, to where it's just too loud, and I don't feel comfortable going out in public smelling that way. This is much more wearable. Yes, you can distinguish the cannabis flower very easily, but the herbal quality to this makes it's not as loud as you would think, and the scent on this one's very good, and it's surprisingly fresh, which, as those of you know that have tried a lot of EJ's offerings, freshness isn't a big, staple in his lineup. He doesn't really have fresh summertime fragrances, and not saying this is a citrus aromatic by any means, because it's not. There's no citrus in it whatsoever, but this does have a pretty good freshness that maintains for the first hour to 2 hours. Then the freshness kind of kills over. But the scent on this one I find is very creative, very beautiful, very wearable for a cannabis fragrance. So I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. Now, longevity. I did get about 10 hours until it killed over on my skin. And for Perfume extrait, like all of his fragrances are, some I get 10 hours, some I get 12 plus. I think attributing to the herbaceousness and the freshness in the opening, this is a lighter compound than most of what he makes. Therefore, I didn't quite get the full 12 hours. I got 10 hours and it kind of died off. So on that, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Now in the projection category, once again, it's relatively heavy in the opening, and then it starts to maintain a mild scent bubble for several hours beyond that, and then starts to sit pretty close to the skin, at least on my skin, for the remaining hours of the fragrance. I would say after the 5-hour mark is where it really starts to sit pretty close to the skin, but never becomes a skin scent until like the 10-hour mark, like I was saying a minute ago. For that, I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10 in projection. It never quite fills a room, but it definitely goes arm's length, maybe a little bit beyond for the first hour, hour and a half. And then once you kind of hit that 2-hour mark, it becomes within an arm's length, maybe half an arm's length, and just starts to slowly get closer and closer to the skin as time goes on. But overall, Gerannabis from Happyland Studio is absolutely an 8 out of 10 fragrance in my opinion. I think the creativity just went up even higher with EJ. As those of you know that have tried a lot of his offerings, he's very creative. We all like to call him the mad scientist because he is. He gets to work, he gets inspired, and he makes magic happen. And I mean, look at the color of that juice. It just goes so well with this label and what this fragrance is. Kudos, EJ. This thing is something special, to say the very least. Of the 3 new releases, I would say this is the most creative, with El Gudo being the most versatile, because it's that sweet apple brandy, fruity whiskey type of scent. But this is definitely the most creative and probably the freshest offering that I have tried from Happyland Studio. And I do have all 17. And this is definitely the freshest besides Blue Fire. I would say that's the 2 freshest fragrances in the lineup. And until next time, do me a real quick favor. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. I do appreciate all the feedback. I love hearing from you guys. How many of you have already ordered your bottle or at least got a sample of this to try it out? It's daring, because at the end of the day, it's a cannabis fragrance. You see the pot leaves all over it. Some people aren't going to be comfortable to wear this in public. I understand that. But if you tried the other ones, such as Juice Box Green Bubble, that's overpowering. It made me nauseous a little bit and kind of gave me a pretty bad headache because it was so overpowering synthetic marijuana. You know, this is so much better and so much more wearable than Juice Box Green Bubble, in my opinion. If you're looking for a cannabis-based fragrance, Gerannabis is going to be the one. And until next time, I will say, if you get your hands on this or any of the offerings from Happyland Studios and you give them a spray, who knows? You might end up thanking me later. Have a good one, guys.